Hi, this is Brian, and I'm here with another demonstration of FlexiDeck, a new advanced automation tool. In this demo, I'm going to show you how you can create macros using keystroke actions, and how macros can trigger other macros. Recording and playing back keystrokes is a tried and true method of performing automation, and can work great in situations where clicking UI elements may not be feasible or reliable. And having macros that can trigger other macros allows you to organize your tasks and easily repeat them as needed. Once again, we're working in Logic Pro X, and this time I'm going to create a macro that adds 4 new audio tracks to Logic, names each track after an instrument, and applies a compressor, space designer reverberator, and EQ using the macro from the previous demo. To start, first I'm going to create a macro and name it Create 4 Tracks. The first step of this macro needs to tell Logic to create 4 new audio tracks, and I'm going to use that using only a perform keystroke action. In the keystroke editor, whatever I type will be recorded here. I don't need to change any of these other settings, so I can just start typing. The keystrokes that I want that will do the trick are Command Option N, 4, and return. With that's recorded, let's see what happens when I run the macro. As you can see, it creates 4 new audio tracks just as we want. Next, I want to rename each track and then apply the plugins to it using the macro from the previous demo. We're going to do both of those to each track in sequence and then move the selection to the next track using the arrow keys. Since Logic will always select the bottommost new track after creating multiple tracks, we're going to work with these tracks in reverse order. Now, I could jump straight into the next action, but I'm going to do something a little extra to make this macro less error prone. Did you notice that when the dialog for new tracks closes, its closing animation took a little while to complete? We want to wait for that to finish before beginning the next action, and we can do that with a wait for UI element action. Now that I've added one in, I want to set its UI element to Logic's create new track dialog. Have it wait for the UI element to not exist, and give it a good couple of seconds before it times out. Now, whichever actions come next in the macro won't execute until that sheet has disappeared, ensuring that any keystrokes that are typed next will go to where they're supposed to go, rather than the sheet as it's closing. This sort of thing isn't always necessary, but when considering that some people's systems may be much slower than yours, it's good to give macros time to catch up if they need it, particularly if you want to share your macro. So with that out of the way, let's move on to naming our tracks. That can also be done with just a series of keystrokes, because I can start editing the name of the selected track by pressing Shift-Return. So the next action we want to add to our macro is another perform keystroke action, and we'll have it type Shift-Return, timpani, return. Before we move the selection to the next track, we want to add those plugins, so we can do that using this button here to insert an existing macro as an action to this macro. I've added the Setup Tracks macro. This is a good point to test our macro, so let's see what happens when we run it. Great, we've already got one track set up. We need to move up to the next track, so we'll insert another perform keystroke action and simply set it to the up arrow key. Now I can option drag these actions and put them on the end of the list and edit the keystroke action that sets the name. Let's say this macro is meant for recording someone's unusual instrument quartet, so the next instrument is tuba. Next is harpsichord. And the last one is meditation bell. We don't actually need the final perform keystroke here since that was the last track, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And that should do it. Let's clear out these existing tracks and try running the macro. Perfect! That was pretty easy. In the next demo, we'll look at how to set up on-screen menus that make it easy to invoke these macros whenever we want.